Welcome to the 518th episode of the Jami Dulaney Plant-Based Wellness Podcast. My name is Jami Dulaney, and I'm your host. I'm a plant-based cardiologist and endurance athlete living in Southwest Florida. Welcome, and thanks for listening. Well, I was in North Georgia, running from Blairsville towards Blue Ridge, in the Cruel Jewel 50 last weekend. You're going to have to hang on to hear how it ended. But I will tell you right now that I had no arrhythmias. I did not get struck by lightning, despite the fact that there was a thunderstorm on the way to the race. So you park at the finish and you take a bus to the beginning, which was about a mile from where we stayed. And there was a thunderstorm on the way, so we had to run in the rain and thunderstorm to get to the pavilion while we waited about an hour to start. But no lightning strikes, and the rain actually stopped before we had to start, so that was good. No broken bones, and I did not become hypothermic after I started. I was pretty cold in the beginning, though, but that doesn't count. You have a drop bag because of the nighttime gear that you might need, and of course there was rain forecasted in the beginning, and it said it should be out of there by 8 a.m. The race started at 8 a.m. So I took a light jacket, and I started to have regrets from the beginning that I should have put in extra gear to be more prepared, but I didn't, and it worked out okay. And actually, after the rain stopped and we got started, it was a beautiful day. At one point, I looked up, and there really wasn't a cloud in the sky. But because of all the rainfall that had happened in North Georgia the week before and that morning, it was pretty humid when you were kind of in the thick of things right in the middle of the climbs. But nevertheless, I did not get cold, and I did not get hypothermia. The race starts right up a steep grade. We're kind of shuffling in a Congo line, and then it opens up, and you do a little bit of road. And, I remember that section from last year. The grade is steep, one of those ones where there's cars have, 2 lanes for somebody to get over. So it was pretty much a power walk up the first hill. And then we got out onto the climb, and as I started going up the climbs, I felt good. I used poles. Going down the hills, I could feel my ankle a little bit from the get-go, but it wasn't anything like it was last year. And, it's like, okay, it's just a matter of getting warmed up. And I didn't take it any further than that. And again, felt really good on the climbs upward, but down, given the rain, it was pretty muddy, rocks, roots, going around trees, still not the descending person that I would like to be. And so I wasn't that fast going downhill. So even though I could go up hills at a reasonable rate, I was certainly not making any time going down the hills. But still felt better than last year. Unfortunately, Michael had come down with a pretty bad sinus infection and decided that he was going to run regardless. And so we decided that we'll just kind of take it easy because there was lots of time, or so we thought, and we would just not really push the aid stations and take our time, refuel, gather ourselves, and go from one aid station to the next. There are a total of 10 aid stations on the course, supposedly scattered any place from 5 to 7 miles. As we go further, I'll note that the mileage was significantly off, especially between some of the longer aid stations. And given the heat, kind of ran out of water, despite carrying 1.8 liters of water and 28 ounces of gnarly electrolyte drink. In addition, I carried a first aid kit that was pretty extensive because I wasn't going to take any chances on not being able to fix my feet if I developed blisters. Carried a light shirt for the nighttime. I carried a headlamp. I carried a Garmin tracker so that we could be tracked in case there was an emergency. I carried food in the form of gummy worms, a whole pound of them, divided in 2 bags, carried some gels, carried more electrolyte drink mix. So I would guess the pack weighed about 7 pounds starting out. But nevertheless, been practicing with that, and we needed to practice with that. So we headed on, and actually felt pretty good. Once you get the pack on, it's kind of sits nice, so you don't feel like you're being pulled in any one way. So the first big climb that we had was 4 miles long, and we knew it was coming. But you kind of forget just how relentless and steep 4 miles can be if you're just going up, 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 and up. You think you're almost to the top of the tree line where you start to see the sun come in, but then you're not. You kind of go around, around the ridge a little bit, and you go up more. But it was pretty much a steady climb. And I felt pretty good about it. Can't say the same for Michael, starting out with a body battery of 5. So if you've listened to me in Garmin devices and body batteries, 5 is not what you want to start out with. So he was definitely on the struggle bus from the get-go, but very determined to see what he had and to give it his best effort. And I very much applaud him for that, because he really put up a tough fight for as sick as he actually was. As the day heated up, so did the humidity. So again, the climbs became very humid, and I was really losing water, like I was running on a Florida 90-degree day out in the heat. It was pretty impressive for only being in the 80s as far as the humidity and how much water we were actually losing. And again, the aid stations, any place from 5 to 7 miles apart, some 6 to 7 miles apart. Really, I would say they were closer to 6 to 7 miles apart in the beginning. That was taking us 3 to 3.5 hours. And, it's basically up, up more, down, down, or up, up more, down, down more. And the more downs I did, the less my ankle started to hurt some, became somewhat stiff. I never had to just rely on my left leg or poles. I felt like I had that, but I just didn't have the coordination to go down the hills like I would have liked. The long climb, drank all the water, drank all the electrolyte solution, came into the aid station, pretty much empty as far as liquids go, which is nice because the pack got lighter, but on the other hand, they fill you right back up and you realize how heavy the pack is. I had a couple gels, mainly gummy worms, and then at an aid station, I had a whole peanut butter and jelly sandwich at one point and 4 ounces of Cokes. So note to anybody that has a Sprouts now has Sprouts' own version of gummy worms that have no artificial dyes in them, and they're actually naturally flavored with beet juice and different other fruit juices, and they're pretty good. They don't stick to your teeth. So I highly recommend them if you like gummy worms. And they sat actually very, very good. 6 gummy worms are 100 calories, so you just kind of grab into the baggie, grab 6, put them between your cheek and gum, and go right off. And so it was a great fuel. And I didn't get tired of them. Sometimes you get tired of the gel flavors. We use Huma gels and Precision. The Precision don't have a flavor. It's just kind of a neutral sugar type of glucose material or ingredients. The Humas have like a lemon flavor, and they actually have some chia seeds in. So I like those, but you do get tired of them after a while. But the gummy bears, I didn't seem to get tired of, so that was good. So the scenario was pretty much moving at about a 20 to 30 minute per mile, or 2 to 3 miles an hour, looking for snakes, rocks, roots, course markers, which were little white flags on the left side of the trail. So I was pretty, not looking around much when I got to the summit, and I'll post some pictures on Instagram. I took some pictures up on top. You can see forever. It's beautiful scenery. The woods were beautiful. Down here in Florida, we haven't had any rain, and it's all dry, but up there, it's nice and lush and green, and it was really pretty. It's also a really pretty day to have the snakes come out and sun themselves. Apparently, there was a rattlesnake on the course that people had to go around, but I didn't see any snakes. I saw some sticks that resembled snakes a couple times, but I didn't see any snakes. Sometimes the descent would go down, and then you go along the ridge line, and the ridge line was like a goat path with a, kind of a fall off the side of the hill below you into brush. They also said that because it'd been so rainy that the poison oak was also very lush. So the trail was very narrow with the grass grown in, and, I presume poison oak, and I will confirm at the recording of this podcast that it truly was poison oak because I'm sporting some on my leg. But that was scattered out. So you're kind of watching pretty close for footing. Unfortunately, at one point I did trip, and not sure, but I landed about 5-10 feet down below off the side of that little goat path into a soft landing area. But I soon, I actually had my eyes closed. I don't know. I must have kind of flipped. And so I opened my eyes and quickly realized that I was sitting in some brush area that could be snake infested, perhaps. Didn't want to take time to find out. So I didn't take much time getting myself up. And it was kind of like a chiropractic adjustment a little bit. I was getting a little stiff, but once I got up, I think the adrenaline was such that it's like it felt pretty good. And, so other than a few scratches and probably some tussles with the poison oak, I was fine. So again, we come into the aid station and take a little bit more time than in hindsight we should have. Sat down, let somebody fill my water bottles up, then looked around the sandwiches and finally got going. About the second or third climb, Michael started having more trouble, told me that I should go on. I kind of regretted it at first. I kind of looked back because I was truly worried about how he was with I knew I was so hot and I was losing so much water, and him being sick, I knew he loses more water than me on a regular day, so he was really going to get dehydrated. So I knew if I was draining my bladder, he was certainly draining his. So I kept going on, and like I said, I was doing good on the ups, powering along. It didn't have to do much in the way of stopping, but the downs certainly slowed me down. I was leapfrogging with a couple of guys. I'd pass them on the way up. They'd pass me on the way down. I'd pass them on the way up. And it seemed like I had to work so much harder to get, I'd go past them and get the climbs, and I'd be huffing and puffing, and then they just kind of breeze down, and wasn't too fun as far as that go. And my ankle was getting more and more stiff, and I was becoming a little bit more unstable. At that point, I got a call from Michael that he was going to drop, and that our trail angel friend Russ, if you listen to the podcast from last year, who lives in Blairsville, was going to come and pick him up and take him to the aid station where the drop bags were, and he would see me at Skeena. We had another friend, Sandy and Mike, and I was really looking forward to seeing them at the aid station. They were working one of the aid stations at mile supposedly 22.7. And at the time he called me, I was at mile 22.8. So I thought I wasn't that much further away from that aid station, and I really kind of needed it. I thought if I got to them and I got some real food, sat down for a minute, I could regroup. At one point, I was an hour ahead of the cutoff, and then now I was like closing in on a half hour ahead of the cutoff. And there was this really, really long descent, and I was really having trouble with it, technical aspects of it, and having to slow, and again, ankle becoming stiff, taking time to stop and stretch my ankle out. And unfortunately, by the time I got to that aid station, I had nearly timed out. I had about 5 minutes left. So, given the fact that Michael was already out and I was there with only 5 minutes, I decided to call it. So that was the end of my race for the day. It ended up being 24.87 miles. Took me 10 hours and not quite 10 hours, a little over 10 hours. I kept my watch running for a little bit. There was 6,485 feet of climbing and 6,177 feet of descending. So it was certainly a good training day. I put a lot of effort in. I had gone through 3 bladders, 1.8 liters of water at that point, and the same amount of the flask. So a lot of fluid had gone in, but still wasn't quite able to keep up the pace. Kind of dilly-dallying around a little bit too much at the beginning is really what kind of got a hold of us. I don't know what would have happened. The next section of the trail had some road on it, whether or not my ankle would have let up or just continued to get worse, or how many cutoffs I could have made. I probably could have made at least one more aid station. I'm not sure. But again, as it were, I thought the best thing to do was to live to fight another day and get off the course. It wasn't a small decision. Out in the course, I was tired. I did go through my checklist of snake bites, arrhythmias, broken bones. Didn't have any of those. Had ankle that was sore. And had I not timed out, I would have kept going. I didn't take it lightly. At the aid stations, there really weren't. I think 2 of them had access to crew, so you were pretty much at the mercy of when the aid station closed, if they could haul you out. A lot of the aid stations were accessed by 4-wheelers. Certainly had to have 4-wheel drive. So the further you went, the bigger the chance you had of either getting yourself out or not getting out. And again, I'm sure things worked out for the best with that regard. The course was very technical, very steep on the way up, very steep on the way down. The rain had washed out, the roots of the trees that were sticking out. So you go down and make a sharp turn around a tree that, was mud, and the mud had fallen out, or the rocks and the mud on together. So it was a really technical course for me that, as a predominantly road runner, and certainly train exclusively on the road for the most part over the last six months anyway. So it made it very difficult to make any time. But it was a great training day, a great practice for technical trails. I do feel like I have made progress going down, felt more comfortable picking spots, navigating my way by myself with the little markers. There wasn't a lot of places to get off trail because the path was so narrow and the woods were so dense. There was not any place else to go for the most part. You crossed a couple Jeep paths. I guess you could have made a wrong turn, but the course was well marked. I'll give them that credit. The aid stations were lacking a little bit when it comes to vegan fare. And in all honesty, the 100-mile race started on Friday. We were there Saturday. So we were kind of the tail end of the race. So the aid stations were kind of at the bottom of their inventory list. So, that's part of the issue. But I'm glad. So I was carrying plenty of nutrition for myself, but there was nothing there to really pump me up, or solid food that was going to help me get my act back together. That's for sure. I didn't get any blisters. I wore Ultra Temp shoes, Temp 5. They didn't have a lot of miles on them because I got a new pair for the race. I think that probably caused some issues because they were a little stiff, because they weren't quite broken in. So given the downhills, technical, stiff shoes, probably got my ankle irritated a little bit. I did not get any blisters. I did not lose any toenails. That is a huge win. The last 3 races I've done, I have had major toenail damage, major blister under toenail damage. And I really didn't want my big toenails to have an issue, or my big toes to have a blister. So I used a lubricant called Salty Britches, and I applied that really heavy. I wore my Ninja toe socks and the Ultra Temps, and I had no foot issues. I'm happy to report, very, very happy about that. I had no nutrition issues. I had no nausea. A couple times I was feeling dehydrated somewhat, but nothing that put me into any kind of problems from that regard. The views were spectacular. The weather was spectacular. We met nice people. It's very fun to be out in those conditions. Even though I questioned why I wanted to run trail races at one point, it's like, why can't you just go for a hike and call it a day? Why do you have to put yourself through this? But again, we'll kind of go into that a little bit more. It was so nice to see Sandy and Mike, even though they had to give me the bad news. They had a cup of ramen with a butternut squash curry, I believe, that was had turmeric in it. It was really, really good. And that tasted good as I sat there, and they kind of closed down the aid station. Russ continues to be our trail angel. If you would like to give a donation to a animal rescue in Blairsville, Georgia, you can Google that and give one to Russ. Russ's wife runs it. They do have a no-kill shelter that they have dogs from, and his wife Debbie works at. So if you have the desire to help out an animal shelter, that would be a great one. I got to meet Darcy and Danny, who are members of the practice that live in Georgia. They met us at an apple orchard that has great apple cider, and you can look around. Obviously, it's not apple season, but they were gracious enough to take time out of their day to meet with us, so it was a great shout-out. Darcy is been plant-based, and she's reversing her diabetes through plant-based and exercising, and she's even signed up for her first 10K, so shout-out to them for taking time out to come and meet us. Again, hats off to Michael for making an effort to see what he had. He was, still is, fighting a sinus infection that really had drained him, but nevertheless, he gave it his best effort. It was kind of worrisome that we were so deep in the woods and in the middle of nowhere, and how the course traversed, and you really couldn't get out if you got into trouble. Like I said, if you made your way to the aid stations that were somewhere around 6-7 miles apart, you could wait there till they closed down, maybe get a ride, maybe not, but there's a a big possibility that you were going to have to walk yourself out to a road to get some help. And again, in the middle of nowhere, so you better have a crew if you had a problem, which we didn't have a crew, other than we had an angel, so that's better than a crew. Thanks, Russ. I've now learned that you can't dilly-dally with the clock. I didn't realize how close to cutoffs we might be because of the slow descents, even though we're moving pretty good going up. So we really didn't have the luxury of taking that much time at the aid stations. In retrospect, I could have come up with some more time had I not done that. But it was a good learning experience to understand more about the clock. I carried a little map that I made with the aid stations and the elevations. It was a little bit helpful, but it was also disappointing since the aid station mileage was not what it was listed on the race course. So we had a good training day and experience despite not completing the distance, and learned a lot and can take it forward and am not injured. So I continue the training process. Certainly the course, I would say, won on Saturday. But again, I get to run soon. I don't have a long recovery. I don't have some injury to come back from, and, keep getting stronger. Am I too old? Am I too slow? Am I not tough enough? Those are questions that certainly went through my mind. And they might have culminated in the last 48 hours. On the other hand, I was out in nature. It reminded me a lot of where I grew up in West Virginia. So it felt comfortable being in the woods, except for the narrow paths, poison oak, and fear of rattlesnakes. But nevertheless, I felt like I pushed my limits, navigated well. The views were amazing. The air was fresh and sweet. It was so green. The rocks that were intermittent, I assume it's granite, because intermittently on the trail, there would be these hunks of white rocks that looked like the granite you'd see on a countertop. And then there were rocks that had speckly, like almost glass-like appearance on top. So I'm not a geologist, but the rock formations were really, really cool. There were downed trees that I didn't look into because I was afraid of what I would see. At one point, I heard a tree kind of swaying and making a sound back up the hill to the right of me, and I thought, wow, the wind's blowing the tree, and you know how if you've been in the woods and you've heard a tree creak. But then I realized there wasn't that much wind, and I thought, geez, I wonder if there's a bear in the tree, and so I kind of looked back, but there wasn't a bear either. So, in the first 48 hours, I felt really good about the decision that we made, and actually afterwards, I still feel good about the decision that I made. It puts a little bit more pressure on me as far as, is my ankle going to hold out in a 50-mile race? Is it ready for a 100-mile race in the end of August? Again, am I able to descend enough to make cutoffs? Should I even be out there? I did not get beat by any woman over 60, because there weren't any women over 60 out there that day. But the reality of it is why I do it. It's about taking the chance on the unknown. It makes you feel alive. You confront it. It's a struggle, and you confront it, but it's a struggle that I got to choose in advance. I signed up for the race. I get to do that. I got to race. It's very different from struggles that occur in one's life, people's lives that are cast upon people, cast upon us, that you don't have any choice over. So yeah, there were struggles, but it was a struggle that I chose. There were potential consequences, but not really life-threatening. And it was over, and I had the choice of the outcome, and I made it. But being out there looking for snakes, rocks, direction signs, paths, taking hydration, aid stations, it allows you to be just in that moment. And it's kind of like meditation in motion. I wasn't thinking about anything except the trail, the next aid station, taking in nutrition, just those simple things. And it's not very often that you get 10 hours and 22 minutes to just think about simple things, listening to the birds and potential bears and, looking around and seeing nice sights. And it just is a grounding as far as being there, and in somewhat of a peacefulness in some respects. That kind of hurts a lot. You begin to notice everything, like those colored rocks and occasional wildflower and the different vegetation, and hearing different birds than I do when I'm running in Florida. And it's just a nice feeling. When you come into an aid station, there are strangers there waiting to help, fill your water bottle up, give you some words of encouragement, maybe just say you have to walk this out, so you got to get at it. In the middle of the woods, taking their time. And I am forever grateful to the people that volunteer in these races. They're interesting people that you get to meet. We met some interesting people in the sag wagon, Russ's Jeep. I hauled some other people out. And it's always nice to get to hear other people's stories. The Japanese have done a study and say that when you're in the woods and in nature, there's a set of microbes that your body ingests that help, are calming. We know that serotonin is produced in the gut, which has an antidepressant effect. Being out in nature, getting fresh air, there's nothing better to help with your immune system. Hopefully it'll help with Michael's immune system in the near future. Although he was extremely tired after his effort, he was not worse for wear, so we'll give the microbes credit for that. Perhaps it's just a glimpse into a peaceful part of this world that, puts day-to-day struggles in perspective, and, maybe helps troubleshoot or look at things in a different light when you come out of doing something like that. We all have a finish line, and some finish lines are quicker than others. But I think doing ultra runs in the mountains kind of gives a glimpse again into the peace that comes when you get all the other clutter out of the way. And I wouldn't have given up Saturday for anything. So I'm back at it. I walked one day, I ran today 3 miles. Training will amp up, which signed up for a night run, 20 miles, first week in June, to get back on the trail and give the ankle a whirl. I've consulted with my strength coach, Nathan, on things I can do for my ankles, some plyometrics to kind of make it a little bit more resilient, change the weights up a little bit. My goal is to make it to the start line for the night run, start line for the Silver Rush 50 mile, and the start line for the 100 mile. I'm not giving at my age a voice because I don't know really what that means. I've never been at this age. There weren't any other 60-year-olds running. I'm not going to compare or look back. I actually run better now than I did 15 years ago. I don't have any major injuries, just a little irritation, so to speak. So I'm here to give today all that I have, and I'm still determined to see how many twists and turns on the next trail I can see and see where the finish line is. Hope it'll continue to keep getting longer, but the idea is to enjoy each day and to push the limits a little bit further than I did the day before. This is a plant-based podcast, so what did we eat while we were traveling? We had Thai veggie stir-fry. We had tofu rice noodles and veg before the race. I made at the cabin. We met our trail angel Russ for a vegan pizza. We had watermelon, strawberries, and bananas. We had avocado toast and tomatoes. And in full disclosure, we had a sandwich on Dave's Killer Bread with the tofurkey slices and chow cheese with mustard, and it tasted great. It's not something I do on a regular basis, but I got to tell you, it tasted great. We're going to change the podcast in the next couple of months. Just to give you a heads up, we're going to add video. So instead of hearing my wonderful operating voice, you'll have to get to see my face and probably Addie, the Dulaney Meinert's faces, and we'll do some probably more interviews. So we'll have video up on YouTube. We'll continue to have the audio-only version available, but I'm looking forward to reaching more people and sharing the story. I think anything that I can do to get people to try anything to push their limits at any age would be great. I'm very transparent on this podcast as I am in my practice. We don't claim 100% success for our patients, nor for us. I'm not perfect. Nobody is. That's why we work with people where they are to help them get better and to push their limits and meet them where they are. So if you have an interest in changing your diet, upping your health, go on over to drdulaney.com and check out our podcast. I'm sorry, check out our website, drdulaney.com, DOCTORDULANEY. You can email me at Jami, Jami, at Dr. Dulaney for more information. Love to hear from you. Thank you always for listening, and I'll see you next week.